record on this computer. You guys heard that?
Yep.
Okay. Cool. So we are recording. It is going. How do you guys want to start it off? Do you want to just start it off? This is going to be on your channel, Justin. So it's going to be kind of your show to some.
Sure. Well, so I wanted to invite two people who I like to talk to and share a little bit about what Jeremiah and I had a longer discussion following you, Tyler, and I talking at New York about sort of the minutia of how the company started, grew, developed. And we thought that that was an interesting story, that sometimes you don't know how things start, and it's helpful. How often do you get to see sort of behind the curtain about what decisions are made or why? And I try to be pretty open about stuff. There's not many secrets I have. And, I try to share my thinking on things. And so we wanted that as a forum. And then we have some exciting news to share. And so I thought, having an opportunity for the three of us to get together again, because there was good chemistry, and talk it out.
That's true.
And if there are ideas that are worth talking about further, maybe people will let us know. I mean, Shit wrote a book. I read it. Jeremiah's read it. I think we've all read it. And it's a good read. I'm never going to write a book like that, but I can talk it out with people.
Actually, yeah, that's fair. You never know. Anyone can write a book. I mean, at the end of the day.
Jeremiah has seen my spelling, and on a daily basis.
Well, that's what editors are for.
He has sent me software to try to help me with my spelling and grammar.
What was that?
What was it? Grammarly? Grammarly. Right,
oh yeah, I use that. It's fantastic. It's on everything. It's great. All right. Well, so let's dive into then the dynamics of Amps and Sound and who you guys are and who you were and what have you and what led you to today, I guess. So starting with that, like company history, so how did that come about? Like the bringing together of how did Amps and Sound become the name? What's like that whole concept? How did you guys, the conceptualization and coming to life and fruition of your business?
So I'll sort of start off at the front end of that story. A good friend of mine named Russ Stratton just got a big old set of speakers for me, these big multi-cell speakers. And then last night he came over and heard a new set of speakers I was working on. And he gave me a compliment that it took me a minute to kind of understand, which was to say, when you want to do something, you just do it. You just start with it and you work the process. The self-starting initiative is something that is sort of a core personality trait to me. Whether it works out or not, I'm willing to try it. And so, like all audiophiles, I started out much less comfortable than I am now, and didn't have the ability to buy nice gear, but I knew what nice gear sounded like. I knew what nice spaces sounded like, and I knew what live music that I liked sounded like. And so you buy used gear, it breaks, and you learn to fix it. Yeah. And I became really wedded to the idea of high efficiency speakers and tube amps of fairly low power, because you can get very, very high, very, very good sound quality for very modest budgets. Mm-hmm. If you let physics work. Big cabinets, big horns, low power. And I did that a lot of times, and I got good at building and started having a team around me that we built really good amps that were used for high efficiency speakers and big speakers. And Jeremiah approached me to ask me to help him with some speakers because I was on the Klipsch forum. And he came over one afternoon, and I showed him what I should know. There's some white whales, like the speaker that got away. I had a Klipsch La Scala that I built that was a Pro Industrial La Scala split cabinet. And nice. We put a big elliptical horn and a big driver and a very fancy crossover into this La Scala. It looked like the War of the Worlds head.
That's awesome.
And that started our friendship. The company I was originally going to call it Schmucks and Mensch Audio.
That's really good.
I don't think everybody would understand the inside joke of that.
Usually it's tough. That's a tough one. Yeah, usually inside jokes for names are tough. I mean, shit
Right.
barely pulls it off. Let's be real.
Right. So, whether I'm a schmuck or a mensch. And so everybody, many people get Amps and Sound's name actually wrong. It's not fully capitalized. It's all lowercase. Mm-hmm. So it's supposed to be Amps and Sound. So if I couldn't give an inside joke, I was going to be as literal as possible, and that became its own joke.
That's the way it works. That's great.
And so we went initially, I was building with my team in a much lower quantity, and we'd build, a few amps at a time, and then we'd sell them. And I had a WordPress site, and I had a friend that helped me with some photography and had like PayPal buttons. And Jeremiah, approached me to do some more things, and we became a partnership. What can you contribute, Jeremiah? What's your thoughts on like that?
I met you the first time at the the Newport show, and you were powering a room, and I walked up and I saw your name, and I'm like, Justin Weber, man, I'm like, you're on the Clips forums. I know who you are. Like, you actually use your real name. And I was kind of like starstruck at first, like a name you actually read, you actually know the person. I was like, oh, whoa, what's up, man? How's it going? And he's like, yeah, I'm in this room and here's what's going on. And I was with my buddy and a couple of friends, and he was just like he was all over the forums, like, whether it be speakers, amplification, or just talking to whoever it was. Like, he was on like each person that I was like, every single like thing I figured out, he was a part of. So when I got my Clips with Scalas and I saw his Clips with Scalas, I was like, hey man, you're in Orange County? No way. Like, I'm from Orange County. We got to hang out. And I came to his house and I was like, yeah, man, this guy makes big horns. This is a good deal. I like this. Yeah. And then, we did a couple speaker projects before we really like decided to do like amps together for sure.
That's cool.
Big horns. I thought stuff would fit, and they were just everything I bought was too big. And Justin was just like, "You bought the big ones? All right, we should hang out." I was like, "That was an accident, but I'll take it."
They were fucking huge too.
Yeah, I thought it would fit into a box like this big, and it ended up being like a box that was like, oh deal.
Round hole, square peg.
Yeah, a whole like new crossover. Nothing I had was going to work, but the idea was going to go to a better idea, and so I found someone to finish that.
Between the two of you guys, like, so what would be like your idea? Like, is this like a Laurel and Hardy? Like, what's the, like how, is this how do you think your personalities played into building out this company and getting it to where it was or is?
Well, I think that, I was already building and doing things that were expressions of my value set. Jeremiah is a serial entrepreneur and really understood taking good people's ideas and helping them become companies, real companies. And so things that we did initially were like value statements, mission statements, org charts, target audience, stuff like that, And, I would sort of look at there's like been two phases to our relationship, because Jeremiah sort of stepped away and it's back under our helmsmanship. But he remains a daily advisor. But in the first stage, what I think Jeremiah helped me understand was storytelling, messaging, visual messaging. I think everybody knows I don't like emails if it's more than 100 words. I am disincentivized from replying back, but I'll talk to you.
Yeah,
anytime
that's true.
You want to talk,
This is true.
I'll talk to a person. But helping me to figure out what were core ideas and how to communicate those effectively, and then how to really present a storefront where I could leverage our good ideas and our good workmanship into a brand that extended beyond our physical size.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the brand values and the brand DNA were already there when I met Justin. It was kind of just taking those things and then evolving that like on a pretty much a daily basis. When we first started working together, it was like, there was a reply to an email and call every once in a while. Then it was like a lot of phone calls. Yeah, you learn a lot about things like, setting up the lowercase as the logo and setting, just figuring out typefaces. Yeah, just going through colorways and figuring out jacks again and going through every single thing and being like, why'd you pick that? Why'd you pick that? Why'd you pick that? And he's like, why are you asking me these questions? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't know your value system. Like, what's the deal here? And you start figuring out stuff and you start picking up things like, oh, you like mass, you like these, this is what you're into. Let's let's focus on those things. Don't shy away from things that you like. Be proud of those things. That's what you stand for.
That's you. Yeah.
Yeah. Attract people.
Having to explain why we construct ourselves the way we do was a new concept for me. Because
it's hard to talk about why you like big back ends on your amps. I understand.
Yes. Well, I mean, we can go into sort of a case study if someone like really wanted it, but it's like, why is this built this way? Mm-hmm. There are probably 1,000 little decisions for which only 30% are engineering or electrical. Mm-hmm. The other 70% are like value, communication, usability, branding, model consistency, target audience value, target audience budget, ability to execute at right level. And so it was a new semi-uncomfortable experience initially to be able to say, like, explain this to me though.
So would you say, so like you had like the bones, right? So like that's you were there, you were kind of looking for like the next evolution, right? Like, I guess to say, right? Like the bones were there. And then Jeremiah, you kind of came in and your role was more or less like you were that catalyst to help kind of come together with the both of your ideas and your experiences and knowledge to basically jump to that next evolution of the company, right? Of ampsandsound as being.
Well, we had an idea. We definitely had an idea of what we were going to do, and it was kind of based around speakers and monoblock amplifiers. And it wasn't really, we weren't really into the headphone scene like in our first show. We were more doing speakers. We had 2 different rooms, and then going to more shows, you realize like the headphone audience was really paying attention to us.
Yeah.
That was probably took us a year to figure that out. Do you think in the first year that kind of happened?
I mean, what's an interesting thing is that, so I was very much 2-channel driven, and the high efficiency speaker market, minus maybe Klipsch, but even Klipsch took a nosedive 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. Yeah. And the same engineering principles that go into building a quiet amp for a 110 decibel efficient compression driver are the same engineering principles that go into building an amp that's quiet enough for headphones. And so there was a pivot at that point, but I mean, I think that what Jeremiah helped me to do was to understand that all the decisions are a brand rather than all the decisions, they weren't accidental, they were intentional, but they were sort of in a linear cascading process rather than sort of, let's take them all out, throw like marbles, throw them onto the floor and put them back together, reorganize them back together, having grouped them in different colors or shapes or sizes.
Jacks.
Again and again. Yeah, again. And the next time I'm commenting, he's like, why, how are you always commenting on stuff? I'm like, it's part of design. You see those things. And we listen to our customers too about spacing of things, like people started using bigger power jacks and we had to start moving things around.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So, I mean, there was an interesting shift at one point that sort of like coincided where Jeremiah entered things, was that we used to hand drill all of our chassis.
That's
labor tell you intensive. Even when there are aeronautical machinists that could undoubtedly do it at a very high degree of precision and that it was repeatable. I and my staff are not those people. And so there were variances. And so each amp, you know, like Jeremiah could show you, he has like a Kenzie that's on like an older, like a metal chassis. And like, if you look, it looks great on the outside. You look inside, you'll see like there's deburring marks on the whole of the inside of it.
Yeah.
You know, because you had to, because you're using these punch presses and things like that. And so I moved from doing it that way to putting things on Front Panel Express, which is sort of like an Illustrator style design software. Well, so Front Panel Express will CNC mill plates to any thickness with any, you know, as a CNC, and so it's 100% repeatable, consistent, and that was a real shift for us. Other real shifts were, and man, I fought Jeremiah for almost 2 years to go to Shopify. That was like a biblical moment.
You fight for no, stop it.
Shopify, PCB colors. That was
cool. PCB color. I mean, black is a good color. I own that.
It came out. It was nice. It was fun. You know,
PCB colors are fantastic, man. You get some purple ones in there, and
we've had some purple PCBs. Now I just want them to be as thick as possible.
That's also fair. I mean, but those things matter. Like those, like the aesthetics. I think personally, that's a big part of why I like a lot of this gear. I want to sound fantastic, but I also want it to look really cool to me.
And I think I initially came at it much more as like the engineering answer, like, well, this is how it has to be because. And now I think I look at things as anything that's possible with time, money, and effort.
It's a true story.
The question is, where on the Venn diagram do you find yourself?
At what point do you run out of one of those?
Right. For sure. And so, you know, I credit Jeremiah and, you know, to some degree, the grit going from being a hobbyist to being a small business owner to being an entrepreneur. And I know I'm still a small business owner, but I have an entrepreneurial spirit at this point that was, I mean, it's not part of my day gig. My day gig is I cuddle people with words. If you spit, I get bonus points. You know that, right? We had like a separate bet.
Gonna get him.
You gotta
time it right.
I hadn't started to drink yet when you said that. So yeah, like Jeremiah said, you had to time it. I was just about to drink when you.
Are you telling me the timing matters?
Yeah, a little bit. Time it.
But yeah, I mean, I think that like I had always thought, I mean, when Jeremiah met me, I was an enthusiastic hobbyist who funded the next project with the first project's proceeds. And at this point, I'm not as entrepreneurial as Jeremiah is, but I'm much more entrepreneurial than almost anybody else I know. And that was an interesting shift because it's like, well, you know, where are there partnerships? Where can you leverage or grow that process? It was a learning curve. You know, 10 to 15 years in the making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
and it still continues to be a learning curve.
Yeah, a lot of it's to do with, I have a fashion background, so like things change a lot faster in fashion than they do in this industry. And for me, it's like I'm running around the shows like it's a fashion show. I need to see all this stuff really quick because it's going to be gone. And in reality, like it wasn't easy, but we had a chance to really see the domestic market like in its entirety. We had a chance to like go around to different shows around the US and meet the market and see what was going on. And I think that really kind of opened our eyes to who was out there and also like who appreciated things, you know, like, yeah, man, from like our first show to last, you know, to the New York show, every single one's been super cool. Yeah. It wasn't like we had a show where we sat there and we're like, what are we doing here? This sucks. Like we blew it. They were all fun. I mean, they were all fun. And the brands and the people really appreciated us, you know? I think that was the most fun about it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Just watching it grow. The headphone community for us grew pretty quick. But I mean, the ampsandsound as a brand grew nicely. but yeah, it was definitely a really interesting era.
Well, and I would say like one of the, looking at like the headphone community, and that's sort of like the engineer's answer versus what's possible answer versus like wanting to do strategic partnerships to do really extra cool stuff. Like, I've said, so like, I'll give you an example. The Mogwai or the Kenzie used to not be able to tolerate a non-molded IEC power cord because just spacing, the way it was originally laid out, it was too close to the power transformer. And so if you used a big watt gate connector, you couldn't get it to sit squarely. Or moving the headphone jacks from the rear. If you build 2-channel amplifiers, headphone jacks in the rear is completely a logical.
It makes sense because that's where all the jacks are.
Design decision. Right. Well, it's where the jacks are. It's where away from the tubes. I mean, there's like lots of really good reasons to do it, but then you have to look at like usability. And then I remember with like the Mogwai SEs, I had, customers that were like, but I want the 8-ohm tap. And I mean, Jeremiah can tell you, like, I was like, ha, no. Almost rather explicitly. And then it was sort of like, no, well, we'll put it next to the speaker binding post because at least then it's like organized where it needs to be. And then ultimately you go, this is yours and you're going to make it special for you and you're going to use it ways that I haven't yet conceptualized. You want it this way? Let's try to execute it this way for you.
Yeah. Like I'm watching people do stuff and I'm thinking left-handed model. You know what I mean? Like I'm watching left-handed people walk up and like put their cross arm over here and then use this thing. I'm like, huh. But like, we're not going to make a left-handed right-handed amp. But like sitting there as a clothing designer, I'm watching people do stuff. I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? And he's like,
but that's fair though. Like that, but sometimes it takes that, right? That's that little spark or that thing, like you're saying before, just too. Like you have to get outside of your comfort zone to some level, and it takes sometimes a customer, or it takes a friend or a not a friend or whatever to catalyst that, right? Like, so I think that's kind of interesting, like that you bring that up, because I think that's very true. Like how much stuff came about in this world where it's not because it was something that the person was doing, but because another factor came in and they went, oh, and they had that aha moment,
Well, so Jeremiah will tell you that like I think I'm pretty value conscious about certain decisions, either in my own life or in designing things, like things that I don't see performance dividends, I don't necessarily participate in. But I try to have the fewest, like dispositionally, I try to have the fewest number of features on a product as possible.
Honestly, simple is good, man. Like as far as like,
well, it's sort of like saying that I don't need a can opener when I have a hammer.
I would say it's more elegant than that, but that's fair. I mean,
well, I mean, right or wrong, and I'll show you guys in a little bit. But I built an amp I'm calling, Stealth October or the Black October, because I'm now building preamps, and we'll get to that at some point. And the whole point of building a preamp was, I think, gain structures are better served by preamps, and I didn't want an amp to have a volume pot, even though if I could. The way that the step attenuators work is that you move them all the way to the right, you bypass them. That doesn't work for me. I'm just going to delete the pot. I don't want to have two things that are duplicative in function.
Yeah, agreed. That's fair.
But it's an interesting duality where like you're getting, a countervailing pressure from people who you trust that say, but what about this? But what about this? But what about this? And so you try to keep the feature set low and pure because that you want execution to be really high, but you also understand that there are things that change and trying to meet those changes.
It's that fine balance of keeping your truth and your not ideals, but like your path, right? While taking in the good advice and or things that you can iterate on and then keep moving forward, right? Like that's the fine line.
Well, yeah, there was also a moment where the high-end headphone market really blew up as we're sitting at the booth. Like we're sitting at the booth watching everyone else bring new headphones across and bring them to us, being like, I hear this headphone on your amplifier. And pretty much every show since the beginning, there was always a new,
Something
more
new.
expensive, needs more power headphone.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
At one point we were, and I mean, at some level we still are. It's like, you need a bigger gun. I will give you a bigger gun. You need more power. You don't need more power, but you believe you need more power. We have the capacity to bring more power than the diaphragm of that driver or your ear can tolerate. But then Jeremiah will tell you that sort of 5 to 6 years ago, there was sort of planners like 10 years ago that were really very exceptional. And then the dynamics came back, the ZMFs and the focals. I'm a huge ZMF fan. I own a lot, thank goodness. And I don't even think I own them for the wood color, to be honest with you. I own them because both the value proposition, the handcraftedness, artisanal execution, the absolute attention to detail, but also the tonal balance, the tonal weight has always been a thing for me.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, I would tell you that I'm an icon guy almost through and through.
Oh man, those icons do sound fantastic on the Nautilus and Red October too, man.
So, but that, so you had this, growth of very efficient dynamic drivers, like the VCs and the Stelias. And so then, we had this other push, which is to keep noise floor down, but power up. And so then it's like, have to try to find yourself in both paths. We've learned more, I was given by Matt Weisfeld, the owner of VPI Turntables, VPI Industries, a book on the Toyota method.
Oh yeah.
Just-in-time manufacturing. And I think Jeremiah can tell you, because he's met our staff, that I don't ask people to work faster, like ever. I'll pay people more to work longer. So if we have things that are necessary, I will pay overtime to try to get things done, while recognizing that people do this because they love it, not because they need to do it. And so their participation is a choice that I have to respect. And I think we kind of we now educate our customer if they read our site that says, we're a small team that cares about sound and we build it to the best of our ability. And God's time and your time are different as far as the production of this amplifier. But back to the point, we don't build cheap and we don't build fast, but we always demand the very best work possible. And for all of our partners, whether that's the metal shop or the transformer winder or the capacitor maker, we ask, are there ways to make it better? Don't ask if it's more expensive. I mean, I don't want it to be more expensive ever. But I don't ask, I never frame the question with, and can you do it for less? Like Jeremiah can tell you, I have never, ever asked somebody to do some shit for less. I will always ask somebody, though, to do it better.
That's smart. Honestly, that's smart. I mean, and it shows, like you can see it on your website, but if you've ever had the opportunity to actually open up or see the insides of your amps, like they're so meticulously laid out and so meticulously and perfectly, like just they're magnifique. Is that right? Am I pronouncing that right?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I don't do this for every amp, but almost every amp gets a photograph of it internally before it comes to me. And before it ships out, I put it on my 22-inch screen and I'm looking at layout. And I've called up my staff before and said, hey, why did we do it this way? And I'm probably the only person who's familiar enough with the amplifiers to go, why did we make this subtle change? Or why did you not do this?
Attention to detail.
This butters my bread. It does not put bread on my table, but it is an ego exercise. And if it is not worth being proud of, then I don't need to be doing this.
Yeah, that's fair.
And they
Yeah.
last. This
Yeah.
isn't something that you wear out. This isn't like, also like make from apparel. In a few years, you expect that thing to be upcycled or go away. This isn't a situation where that is. Like, we make stuff and it eventually goes to another customer that we're hoping becomes a fan of our brand.
Yeah.
So the evolution of what we're making isn't just for them to buy more products. So, or us to learn. It's like both.
It's almost
we're
heirloom almost, right? Like to some level, right? Like where it's that trend, it's transcends just that one person that originally buys it, for instance, right? Like,
Well, I would say, like, if you look at everything minus the Red October and the statement pieces. So if we go the non-statement pieces, I would predict a lifespan of 20 years. 10 years, you're going to need to recap the power supply. 20 years, you're still going to have a really good functional amplifier 20 years from now. The statement pieces, though, have an almost indefinite power lifespan to them. You'll put capacitors in them, but they're done in a way that everything on it is a replaceable part. Whereas on the PCB based ones, maybe there's a finite life to that PCB heat cycling.
Yeah.
But since we've paid a lot of money to have very, very overspec traces on these PCBs, and they're more than an 1/8 inch thick. They can handle an awful lot of deflection of energy. So when you buy one of these things, I used to think that it was going to be one owner 20 years. Now I'm just happy to believe that it's 20 years of life to this product. But good amplifiers, really good amplifiers, have an almost indefinite lifespan to them.
Yeah, that's fair. That's smart. I mean, it's smart. I think so. I mean, I'm a big fan of your work, as you know, but like, I think that speaks to me on a level of just that art, the artistry of it, the look of it, the meticulous care that goes into it. Like, all those things are things that I care about. And so, like, it shows. And I think that's what's going to speak to most people, I think, personally. I don't know, I'm just an end user, but as an end user, that's how I view it, right? Is how is this thing going to live in my life? But I think also, how would it fit into somebody else's if I was to move it along, kind of thing, right?
One of the things I was going to touch on, and I mean, at one point, Jeremiah and I, Jeremiah returned the company back to my full helmsmanship, which was, a really great thing. But, where his expertise was both the stewardship and guidance of how to become a brand, and that a brand transcends a single product, and how do you have that arc where the start point and the end point may not be anywhere near the same, but that the thread remains traceable. And at this point, the daily guidance is helpful, and it's like business deals. It's not color choices, but it's more about the structure of how to make a brand thoughtfully. Those are things that I've come to appreciate.
I think they're important, honestly. Like, it's I mean, you are your brand, right? At the end of the day, I mean, and that's something that you should own, because if you don't, then I don't know. I don't know brands like Jeremiah's, but Jeremiah, you could probably chime in and kind of key on this, or correct me. But I think if your brand is you, right? Like, if you diminish your brand, you're diminishing your products. You know what I mean? There's all sorts of things there. But if you keep it on a higher level, like what Justin's doing, like where he's holding it to his status, that's important.
Yeah, there was definitely Justin, and there was definitely ampsandsound. They were similar, but they weren't the same things. And for a while, we actually tried like having another person like go to shows with us and doing different things. We just realized that Well, it was more just like, it should be Justin talking. Like, it shouldn't be like me standing in the front or somebody else standing in the front of this other person. Like, he wanted to do it. And we just kind of thought that, like, you know, whatever we thought before that, and it was the wrong choice. And it was like, hey man, you should be the guy that's over there doing that stuff. It shouldn't be, you know, we shouldn't have a mark. We shouldn't have somebody doing that, you know, these things for us, because we need to figure this out for ourselves. We need to tell people what we like and what we don't like, and we need to figure those things out. And hopefully this emanates from the brand. Like, if we could put our work into this thing, it should show. And it did pretty quick.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, I mean, obviously, look where you guys are at today. I mean, so.
Well, but you know, after you take, it's interesting. Brand development, branding is a never boiling pot until, you know, that the only way it boils or remains at temperature is effort
and consistency.
Yes, effort and consistency. And, you know, at times it waxes and wanes, but, you know, I'm the advertising department, which is sort of silly in that my wife owns 51% of the company, so it's a female-owned company. I get to manage it, but it's owned by a woman. And Jeremiah is the consigliere. You know, but my wife runs a advertising agency, but she doesn't post she doesn't do the Instagram ads. But I think that what that comes back to is what Jeremiah said, was like, you are the brand, and things flow from you, and translating it to others, then to, you know, like, no one's going to row your boat but you. No one is going to decorate your cake in the same beauty that you will. No one can translate your image.
Yeah.
You know, you're the great organizer.
Yeah. Well, no one can paint a picture.
You can farm out other things, but identity you cannot farm out, or should not farm out.
It was too early for that. Yeah, we didn't have it. We didn't have it yet.
And there's a point. Yeah, there's definitely a point where you can, once you transcend a certain level, or you move to a certain level of brand recognition, you can I think you can slowly transition from that to some level, but not entirely, right? Like, there's always.
Wait, go ask Jason Stoggart if that's the case.
It's hard. It's not so. That's what I'm saying. Like, but it's also a very hard thing to even pull off.
And hopefully everybody understands. I'm not putting that down. I meant, like, you know,
it's a hard thing to do.
Shit is enormous compared to us, and yet the principles are still
very
defining the identity of the company.
And that's what I'm saying. It's very hard to get to a brand. Like, I don't know, Jeremy. I'm not a brand person. I'm not. But Jeremy, like, to me, it seems like to get to that. Like, to me, that's like, it's almost like to get to a point where it's this is either here or there. We're getting into a whole different philosophical thing.
No, this is a real thing though. This is like how we saw. I kind of saw it like this was Justin's brand. He should have this, like, for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is the thing you can do. His first amplifier was named after his daughter. I always kind of thought it would be cool to, like, pass it down to his daughter, or, like, you know, there's this lineage of, like, you have this thing, but how can you set this company up where, like, in 20 years, people will care? People will still remember what those things are. And we had some things that were set, like, he's in Southern California, so he's going to be a Southern California brand. And I thought that was an attractive option. I thought that was a cool thing. There's a lot of things about what he was doing and what he do. Just with his real business, he's not leaving. He's not going anywhere else. He can sit there and have, you know, and manage these people and work with these people and make a network of builders around him to build up build the brand. And it happened. Yeah, it happened pretty quick.
I mean, but that's what I was talking about. Like you're always going to have, like, Justin, as you as a like, we'll just call it like a founder, right? You're the founding. We'll use that kind of tried and true concept, but the founding father, let's say, of this company, of this thing, and you're setting it up, like what Jeremiah's saying, as to be like that, right? Where you can have it be this good baseline.
So people sort of always ask, like, are you an engineer? are you a IEEE? No, I'm a social worker. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I can help navigate really critical mental health needs with people. That's my specialty, psychiatric and medical social work. But I'm a fantastic, at this point, project manager with a real value set and idea of where to take things. And I have committed, kind, talented people who work with me, both because they wish to and because we do good work. I can tell you that most of the people who work with us would not work with us if we put out shitty stuff.
That's a quick way to torpedo your brand and your whole company and everything.
Well, but it happens by accident. But I mean,
true.
Everybody stands vigilant on the wall to pull their weight, to execute a good product,
which is smart. And I want Jeremiah, you looked like you wanted to say something.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Real quick, before I jumped onto another thing, I wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit. We've been kind of hopping around, what is Amps and Sound, the history, the organization. I want to quick touch on the organization of Amps and Sound. What does that actually mean? How do you organize your company? And like you mentioned that you have these builders, and Jeremiah mentioned you have it's kind of spread out through Southern California. Explain to me your company's organization, essentially, I guess.
Sure. I work full time for the state of California. Mm-hmm. I work part-time for a hospital. I'm on call to a hospital for 2 functions, 22 days of the month. I don't sleep as much as I should.
It's true. I can attest to this. For Jeremiah, I can't do.
And I have a vision to build things that I want for myself and that I think other people want too. And I have employees that help me do that. And I have people that are collaborators like Jeremiah that have ideas and have a specialization. I do addiction counseling, so this is a terrible joke. But I have a crack habit building speakers.
If you watch your Instagram, you can tell.
I like to build speakers. I like to build amplifiers. But what's beautiful is those ideas about amplifiers become things that other people want to make use of too. The speakers are almost more of an individualistic expression. But I've been gnawing away at the same core ideas of a speaker for 15, 20 years now. So yeah, I'm pretty close to where I want to be with the speaker. Jeremiah will tell you. But we have employees. They do what's asked of them, and we have a management structure that's relationship based. Based on respect more than money. I've had the same people work for me for 15 to 17 years now. And it's essentially, from an operational standpoint, a company of 3 people. We punch way above our weight.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. 3 people, right? You just said 3. You have a company of 3. Just think about that. Just go to your website, go to and digest that number, I guess, would be the.
But I mean, I have a cabinet maker that knows how to bend heaven and earth with wood. The metal shop. We don't have our own metal shop. R&I Industries is our metal shop, and they're awesome. And Bright Shark powder coating is our powder coater, and they're awesome. Manly uses them. Mm-hmm. Front Panel Express does my top plates. My transformers, though, are fucking magic, made by elves.
There's more than one transformer. There's so many parts. Yeah, our first BOM, we were kind of, we went through our first couple of BOMs. We were just like, this is so many parts of this thing. How are we going to track
basket
all
of
this
goods,
stuff?
bill of materials, for those who don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a serious, how much does it cost to make one of these? And he's like, this much. And I'm like, show it to me. And he's like,
no.
I'm like, all right. I'll come back to you tomorrow. And he gave me an Excel spreadsheet. I'm like, all right, cool. I see where we're at. And then I realized like every single time the prices were changing and we had it was a fun journey to getting documentation. But also with documentation became like part of the growth.
Well, it's a learning process, right? Because then you can learn and or build those relationships. So initially, those people probably are like, this guy's never coming back. He's going to give us 1 or 2 or 5, and then
or asking for custom afterwards or trying to figure out things. Yeah.
I mean, I think Jeremiah's seen all expressions of my temperament, but I think I look like I might rip someone's arms from them and beat them with it. And I certainly think sometimes very violently. But when I speak, I try to speak softly and share the experience of others. And so, no, I don't tell people what the fuck to do. I ask nicely.
What's that?
And I say, and I say thank you and please.
You do. I side note, real quick. I've never met someone that can politely say can be contrived as mean things, I guess. Or not, that's not right. Like could be a difficult situation and you get your way by being extremely polite, even though you're saying something that is not comfortable. That's probably the best way to put it. Like, you know what I mean? Like for instance, we were at dinner and the dinner was not good and you were not afraid to voice your opinions on this, but you did it in such a polite way that it was a very uncomfortable situation, right? Like, I guess I don't know how to say it.
My steak made you uncomfortable?
No, no, but I'm saying like in the sense of like you're in a conflict, you're in a confrontation. There's a conflict, and you are very polite in conflict. I guess that's the best way to put it.
So I was trained to work with a style of therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy. So it helps people who have borderline personality disorder. Mm-hmm. And one of the takeaways is that you can say anything that may sound really, really mean if A, the intention is not to harm the person, and B, it's a known truth. Mm-hmm. So speaking of an absolute truth shouldn't be feared if it's a truth. But
it can be uncomfortable. And that's
for sure.
Yeah.
So I also will tell people, I'm supportively confrontational.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. You're supportively confrontational. Yeah. It was mind blowing watching you work in certain spots. Yeah.
And I think I'm fucking funny.
Yeah.
I may not be, but I think it.
I think I'm funny too, and I know I'm not.
But documentation, as Jeremiah gently said, was documentation. This is where the documentation lived, and it was organized here. And at this point, I know costing per amplifier every time, more or less, give or take, 5%. All of our builds are homogenated so that we can, there's a build sheet for each amplifier that covers major product areas so that we check it off as things that are ordered to match against them. The same for our core components and things like that,
having stock.
So
having stock.
I put it on, I'm sitting on $6,000 to $10,000 worth of tubes at the moment, which is an uncomfortable feeling. But Russia decided to re-adjudicate, some territorial issues from long ago.
Russia is doing Russia things, man.
And as an example, a relationship question, I used transcender transformers for better part of 15 years. And believe it or not, I've never spoken to the owner over the phone, just the owner's preference.
That's crazy. But you have a relationship, you've built
100% have a relationship, but it always starts with asking questions about how they're doing, what's going on with them, understanding where they are, and then asking nicely for them to do something for me.
Yeah. Here's the thing. It's always crazy. And I've actually gotten worse about it since COVID hit, but usually this is something that you mentioned, you keyed on it. I used to be really good at, you start every conversation, even if it's text or voice, it's how are you, what's going on in your life, and then you get to what you want to talk about, right? Like, and I've actually gotten, you're checking in, and I've gotten bad about just being like, and it's weird. I don't know, and I've been trying to like get back to where I used to be of like, but that's funny. But you are really good at that. Like I will agree with that. Like is like you have that, oh hey, how are you, and then you get to the actual, and it matters. That actually really matters,
But
especially now.
Probably helps that we're not engineers too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're very strict.
At a certain point. No, nothing. I got to think of engineers. Just like that's not our job. That's not what like who we're working with. We're working with like, we have our own day jobs. So when it comes to talking to a vendor, we talk to them like how we normally talk. There's no Justin, like there's no other Justin version. This is how Justin talks. This is how I talk. So there's not like, let's put my smart hat on and here we go. We're gonna start doing this. We're gonna start speaking this way, or just super to the point. It's always, we like chatting.
Yeah.
Well, but to talk about that sort of relationship as a good example, like I didn't know until like recently, like Gary, the owner, like has a hearing issue, and because he played some speakers with
120 decibels.
Who used to make those quadraphonic amplifiers, Jeremiah? Really famous quadraphonic amplifiers. Anyways, blew out his fucking hearing in college, like destroyed it. And so phone conversations weren't possible. So it had to be like articulated. But this man is like Yoda for transformers, like just absolutely Yoda. Now, because our business grew and his hands have become really tired, he's retired. But he and all his 40 years of engineering experience designed for us really special transformers. Well, I should say they're really simple. They're very, very, very labor intensive and material intensive to build. He hand winds them, right? Like, or yeah. Well, I mean, he
define hand.
He has a winding machine, of course. Yeah. But what I'm saying though is like how these transformers are done is not rocket science per se, but they are very, very material intensive and labor intensive. Now, Gary, though, before he said, hey, I'm done, and that done has never actually, Gary's still been helpful to us. When there's been a pinch, that man has stepped up and still backstopped me in ways that he had zero obligation ever to do. But when he was done, he said, here's all your IP. Here's everything I've done for you, how to duplicate this, down to the nut, the bolt, the type of metal, the wire, the supplier, everything, the winding pattern. And it made it so that we can continue. And I can tell you, I mean, Jeremiah can tell you that like panic attacks were not even the mourning, because it was a real loss of a relationship, a partner, who had a similar value set, and then panic. Like all the stages of grief in one, and then to be bequeathed, like here's your special, and then the next step was now go find someone who can do it, and that has been an 18-month process and 3 vendors, and I can tell you that like I picked up, so I put it on our outline, but like I'm like Gollum with transformers. I have probably 2,000 pounds worth of transformers at this moment. So I have like 600 to 800 transformers at this moment. And I'm due for like another like 200 to 400 transformers are en route. And it's not enough. I believe in my head at this exact moment that this is actually the baseline number that I have to maintain at this point, and that I have to have re-up orders already in motion
to the next stage,
so that I don't become like California dams.
If you know, you know. Yeah, man, that's crazy. Like that's it. Well, see, that actually speaks to that whole, like you're actually starting to get, you're stepping up to that next level of the company, right? You're stepping up to that next like barrier. You're moving towards, that evolution of consistently having products and having this in stock, I guess. Is that, what's the term for that? Like,
well, Gary was really good about 2 weeks, and then I was placing orders where it was like, hey, I need 75 transformers, and 2 weeks became 4 weeks. You know, and things are cyclical, things ebb and flow. You know, there are times that we are building, you know, 15 amps a month, and there are times that we've built as many as 45 amps in a month. You know, but keeping our proprietary special transformers in stock is one of our harder things to do. And so the way I've done that is to reinvest proceeds into inventory. And so I have, I have a lot of transformers, like a lot. And I have stashes. Like I have backup stashes.
It's like the hoarder of transformers right here.
No, it's like Frank Lucca with his dog. If you know, you know.
Touche.
That's Jeremiah. I mean, do you have any like? What do you recall from that time period of me trying to find, you know, what am I going to do moments from that?
Yeah, with the Southern California production, it was always kind of like a purchase-based production like mentality that we could get parts and turn things around in a certain period of time as long as we communicated those things. And then we got to a point of even before Transcender, going from 5 or 10 amplifiers a month to going to, like what you said, 40, more than 2 dozen a month was a change that we had to like really sit down and figure out. And I think with that and the higher production runs, and then also the transformers taking longer lead times led to having to do more stock of things.
When you had your slow moments to build up, kind of like maintain the consistency, but kind of build the stock kind of deal.
I probably ruined the man's hands because
Justin was developing new amps all the time, and then we're also making production amps, and then we started getting to the point of making collaboration amps or third party amps, and so it was like these little pieces of different things that to be the transformer winder wasn't cool
easy
for him. Yeah, it wasn't easy for him. So we kind of had to figure out a better way to do it. Like, hey, how do we grow into this thing? I'm trying to think of any other parts that we had that were a big problem or a big issue, but I think transformers was the biggest thing. And also probably moving the Jupiter caps was a cool evolution too.
Well, so I was going to say that's something that people, not everybody knows, but like 20% of what I do, you guys will never see, or only 1 or 2 people will see, because it's things that we're developing and noodling around with on the back end.
I mean, just kind of shelved or like saved for later, or like reiterate later on, kind of thing. Actually,
because ultimately, I mean, like, though this is a company, and I try really hard to make sound decisions. I'm an enthusiast first, and if it's a cool idea, I want to try it, and I want to perfect it. And you know, that's material, time, and money intensive, but that you do yourself a grave disservice to show people things that they can't necessarily own.
Yes, and actually,
because they don't know, like, why is it not a good choice?
That's fair. Well, actually, that leads into another thing. Actually, like we just said, kind of like what would make someone want to buy your amps versus something else, right? Competitor kind of thing. And that, I want to say, this leads to, like, so where, and also kind of ties into like your transformers you're talking about, what have you. But where is that, like, that, and you don't have to go into like the details, but like where is the money spent, right? Transformers, casework, you have, we know you love transformers. But like where, like when you're building an amp.
I love transformers to the tune of about $150,000 sitting in a fucking warehouse so that I can actually build shit without cold sweats at night about begging for transformers to be wound for me. And these are being, these are wound now by multiple vendors with NDAs that are using the exact specification for our products. And it's like, that's the most important thing for me, is that like the things that we developed with people who cared, even if the person who cared isn't like, he still designs for me, he just doesn't wind for me.
Which that's amazing. That's I think is key, right? That's that relationship building. So you'd say then what you'd say is your most important part then is the paint on the wood around the sides then?
No,
it's the logo. It's the logo.
The logo.
The logo. I mean, the logo is where you pay them for the logo. No, of course not.
I mean, I think that like, the person, my most important employee, the person who's been with me the longest, shares my values with
outside of your wife.
Yeah, outside of my wife. I've known him almost maybe longer than my wife. Yeah, but anyway, shares the attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
And the same sort of value proposition. So what do you pay for? You pay for our time and our where are the things that matter to us? Our circuits are generally simple. That's a good thing. They use parts that were represented from the 1950s. So before silicon, in general, we don't, we might use some diodes for like voltage doubling, but we don't have regulators. We don't have integrated circuits. We don't have modules to nanny you. And then we have, at this point, probably some of the best transformers that are made in the US, say minus like, I'm sure Macintosh and Audio Research might do it better than us at some level, but like specific to our applications,
that's like you say, like you're just saying though, like that's comparing like apples to oranges to some level.
No. Our shit. I mean, go take a set of Zions and put a sine wave or a square wave through it and compare it to a modern tube amp from almost any manufacturer. I tell you that our transformers are going to be extraordinarily competitive.
Well, no, I mean, I meant more in the sense of like the way they build them.
And wait, and did it without regulators or other.
That's what
other modern implements. But to do that, to win the old way, execution becomes one of the most important things. And I think that if you look at our statement line, the Zions, the Bryces, the Nautilus, the Red October, the Black October,
Jeremiah, do you have anything to do with that, by the way? I don't know if there's
the Black October was channeling Jeremiah for sure. And I'll tell you the why afterwards. But execution matters most. To win doing it the old way, execution has to be tits up.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
That's the work, yeah. Also, every piece has gone over multiple times. It's everything's been curated to be like the work in the system of what Amp Sound is. It's not like there's not. I mean, if you look at the circuits, nothing's really. There's new evolutions, but it's not like new parts.
That's smart. Yeah, yeah, I like that though. That's really cool. It's a intuitive and smart way to kind of do that though. I think personally.
I think the other thing is like Justin makes custom. You want to do something, to call. Amp Sound can do custom things. They can do. That's why I called them in the first place. Now there's color,
but I mean,
there's so many reasons.
Custom looks different now, but yeah, I mean, like color is such a fun expression at this point. It can't be done on everything, but you saw some of our amps that were different colors. Color's
Fantastic.
rad, in my opinion. And the big pieces are intended to be a statement piece, not in like the $100,000 esoteric, it like for headphone users. I always think like I had this one customer who ended up buying 2 Mogwai SEs and used them in essentially like
two
separate amps, exact same amp twice. Because he had different rigs and wanted to be able to like compare and listen to things and all that sort of stuff. But he was relegated to like using it in a really small room because his wife didn't appreciate the hobby and all this other stuff. And I was like, yeah, we're not doing that. We're not doing this. You want the biggest for me? It is a defining idea to place it on the table, and you walk away quietly because it just absorbed all the light in the room.
And that's
it's a little black hole. It just drop it there and walk away.
Well, actually, before we step into this next topic, because I think that's what we're going to lead to next. I think I have one thing. Because you mentioned a second ago in your little thing.
I'm going to turn the light on. I'm sorry, guys. Yes,
yeah,
I'm listening.
Just listen. So, well, actually, while he's gone, Jeremiah, how are you doing? What's up, buddy?
Fantastic.
So we were talking about modern.
By the way, actually, I have a different idea for those who actually want to listen to this long enough. Jeremiah and Tyler and Justin. Jeremiah and I have talked about doing a men's curated site for different things. Jeremiah turned me on to these Gerber razor blades for opening boxes.
Oh, yeah, awesome.
And his was like, he breaks it out with like, so he had the ceramic blade version.
Yeah, ceramics. Yeah, that was awesome.
Or like, his pen set, like he broke out his, like, he has a very specific pen. And,
oh yeah, I have pins like crazy. Yeah, Jeremiah, your pen
guy? It was interesting, and what I learned from Jeremiah, like his backpack and stuff like that, or like buttons.
The different knives, the custom knives. I have a custom bench made. It even has the purple. Let's see if I can get this to focus. Come on, camera, you love me. Let's do this thing. There it is.
Pull it back now. Yeah, there you go. Yep.
And this is a bench made with copper scales with purple.
There isn't enough acceptance, I think, in a lot, like masculinity, whether toxic or however you want to conceptualize it, doesn't invite men to have special things that they define as special that don't involve guns, engines.
You do face care. You could do beard care. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. Nice shirts, t-shirts, hats.
I think that there's an untapped need in American society and from like a consumer level idea to doing sort of like a headphones.com where you can purchase, but you can talk about the things that matter to you and define you as a person that are not so prescriptive, so that you can buy the really dope ass razor blade or the knife or the pen or the watch.
Sorry, I had a gremlin jump in the room.
Not a problem. Don't get them wet. But Jeremiah, I think, taught me sort of that there's a world of purposeful curation that I didn't recognize. That I was curating for myself, and really there was a larger market, like that part of my brand identity.
People all over the world,
that I curate for others without really knowing it.
Well, I'll have to sideline with you, Jeremiah and Justin, a little later, because there's something that I'm actually working on.
That's what I was trying to mention it for you.
Okay, that I'm working on right now with another. We just got our business license and everything too, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, there's something that might maybe down the line. We'll have to sideline and I'll maybe bring it up and we'll see what Jeremiah. I'll have to talk to the master, Jeremiah, and I'll get your thoughts and opinions.
Branding is an amazing thing. It is a more important thing than I ever understood it, because it's an intentional effort to express values through everything. Small decisions conglomerating into big ideas.
Agreed. 100% agree with that. because what's branding? I mean, you can look at let's get to the base level of it, right? As branding is it's what a thing is, right? Like at the end of the day, if you're not, I don't know, like that's a whole other topic. I'm sure we could have like a whole video on just
Let's
branding.
go. Yeah.
Well, no, I in truth, I don't know. Like we're talking the three of us about what we want to talk about. I hope that people will decide that they want to know more about branding or yeah, I mean branding, and not in the sense of like blue jeans and what color indigo go into your blue jeans, but like what does branding convey, or how is it okay?
There's so much to branding. Like there's a family, there's so many things you can tie into branding. Like there's
Right. And Jeremiah actually honed me into actually thinking about my products as not just an engineering example, but an expression of an identity.
The identity that is key. Sorry, I clutched.
Yeah, we had to pick everything. We had to pick which headphone cables, what headphones, what power supply cable, and all those things were like, we should make our own.
Mm-hmm.
What should we do?
And we tried. I mean, we tried cables.
Yeah, we've done all those things. Yeah. And like you got to figure out what's on brand. Like, do you want to make cables? Do you want to be a part of Audio Quest, or a part of this thing, or lower things, or like you want to like hide the cables so you don't actually focus? Are we playing on digital audio players? Are we playing on streamers? Like, what's our brand? Who are we hanging out with? What are the connections? What are the things?
How do you build it out?
Well, and interesting, like something that was sort of a core decision for me that was very unpopular that at this point has come back into vogue was like with the Mogwai OG. I wanted that amp to still have speaker binding posts, and I remember being told, people who Jeremiah knows, that adding binding posts, they said to me that anything that you put a binding post on, you will sell 25% less of, because it is neither a headphone amp nor an integrated. And my argument was like, look, man, I'm coming from a world where like your first audio rack is your bookshelf.
Yeah.
And the moment you get someone pregnant or cohabitate with people, gone are the speakers, and here come the headphones. But that changes as
they get older. Yeah.
And no one necessarily wants to change their tone choice. They may just want to change how that's expressed.
How it's conveyed to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I will tell you this: the Mogwai on headphones, especially like the ZMS, every headphone I tried, actually, the big surprise for me was like the Rad Zeros and what have you. But like the Mogwai as a headphone, fantastic. The Mogwai with very efficient corn scalas, like I gotta say, that's some magic. That's some magic right there.
And there are people who like will put 200 watts into a corn scala like you own, and they're like, I love it, it's the best. and I'm sitting here going, man, all you need are like 5 watts. They just actually got to matter.
It's like, but why? Yeah. But why? Yeah, like I can attest this because I have corn scalas, and it's like I have you built them, Justin, and like the Mogwai, and I've tried it with more powerful amps. I've had I think I've had 100 watters into them, and it's just unnecessary. Like it's really, it's too much to some level, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's a tone base. It's a tone based company, and like you said earlier, like we were making horn speakers. So the idea of powering that low, it's all the first watt. It's all the first. Mm-hmm. It's the beginning. You can listen into it, and it becomes the same thing you listen to with a headphone.
It's true. It's so
makes
fantastic.
A lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. Like it just works, right? Like like we were saying, like it's that first initial impression in both the headphone to the growth to the speakers. Like
dude. Hold on a second.
I'm with you.
There was a dude that put
LCD ports.
Show. Was that what it was? There was a dude that came to our booth, and he took a headphone amp and he plugged it into the speaker outlets. And I looked at Justin and I was like, dude, this guy's gonna I don't know what's gonna happen right now. And we kind of just let's see what happens. Yeah, we kind of had this little It's not our headphone. He chose this. Like, you know, we kind of get like the hey.
He chose this life.
Well, no, he came there specifically. This guy came there specifically to do this. Like, he brought speaker tabs to a headphone, like, to do this.
He ended up buying 2 amps. You know that? You remember that?
Yeah, he didn't really speak that much English, though, right? Did he speak that much English? Do you remember? I don't remember.
No.
I don't think he really spoke to us that much. It was kind of like this more of a, you know, like, communication thing.
Was it the awkward standoff, stare off thing, and he just kind of did it while looking at you, staring at you?
Well, I guess I can't really remember that specific.
Well, but the thing is, he plugged it in. It was so fucking loud.
You could hear it. The whole room could hear it
because it was at Can Jam Rocky Mountain.
Oh,
and
man,
we were
Rest
in like
peace.
we were like in the divorced mezzanine room, and I mean, like, it was like the equivalent of like 110 decibels coming from some LCD 4s with 10 watts on them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you had little speakers that were not just blasting his ears. They were cool.
Yeah, real near field listening on his head. That was kind of our moment of like, wow, that people really do. People want the extra power. This is for real. There's headphone junkies out there that want power.
Well, I mean, think about like every guy who covets it.
Rabbit holes.
Who here owns HE6s?
I mean, I had them in, and actually, it's funny because I actually did power the HE6s off of. I think at the time, which amp did I have of you? I think it was the Mogwai. I tried it off of. Was the HE6 with the Mogwai? But yeah, like it's fantastic.
You know, but Emotiva makes like what they used to call the A100, and it had a jumper that goes, here's your 1 watt. You know, it's an integrated, very, you know, like it's one of the best budget choices you can get. It's a Class AB amp, $300 at this point. It used to be $230, right? And it's a headphone jack now. The newer ones had headphone jacks, and it'll give you like 1 watt out of the headphone jack, but they had a jumper that you could change that'll give you 50 watts out of the headphone jack. And so all the HE6 guys were buying these things so that they could.
Insane, dude. Like,
it's got a little bit of dampening.
I mean, like, wow, like that's just insanity. But whatever. But people want it. I think. I don't know. Anyways,
it's the evolution. It's the evolution of our industry, of where we're at. You know, there weren't as many. There weren't this many headphones in the market to power. So we're thankful for that for sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, HE6 really is the only thing that comes to mind, right? Like at that, like especially in the past, other than the Susvara, the Abyss. I mean, since though HE6, right? Like
LCD 4s, like a lot of juice.
They like a lot of juice, but not that much. I mean, I can see the Susvara, the Abyss, and the HE6 are probably the most hungry though, right? Like I would say, or thirsty. Can we call them thirsty?
Well, no, wow. And what's the entry level hi-fi man that's really nice?
The Sundara, but there's the
the Sundara. The Sundara, that thing likes power too.
Huh.
Like, you know, not HE6 levels, but I mean
it definitely it comes more alive.
And Ether 2s like power.
Ether 2s, yeah. Oh,
Stealth's like power.
Stealth. That was the surprise shocker for me, man, for Can Jam New York that we were all at. Like the Stealth off of your Nautilus in the Red October, like that was peanut butter and jelly, peanut butter chocolate. I was impressed. I wasn't as impressed off other amps, but like I don't want to piss off Dan Clark, but like I mean that's my opinion, personal preference was that.
Well, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of. By the way, I'm sorry if there's kind of dim lighting. It's my office. It's getting into that mood lighting.
You tried to woo us, Justin?
I am. So I got some new things. Let me see if I got some light in here. So let me see if I can help this. There we go. All right. So if you guys can see that a little, right there. Let's see, right there. So right there is my preamp that I'm going to be building.
That thing's pretty sexy looking.
I will tell Jeremiah can tell you that the preamp was another learning experience, expensive learning experience. About not all partnerships go well.
True story.
so I decided to row my boat with the preamp circuit that I've built for years and years and years. And you think that the Nautilus had power at the show. Wait till you see it when you put a preamp in it. It feels like it's twice as powerful.
Well, because there's a what were the preamps you had before? Are you do those?
Those were little. We sell them now. They're input transformers that have voltage gain,
which are not awesome. But this is like next
way
level.
different.
This
yes. Well, this would be like hooking up a Nautilus to your LE kit pre.
I'm tracking. Okay.
So new things that we're offering now is we're going to have a pre coming out in 2 months or so.
Okay. So we're looking at preamp as a new thing coming out,
which is 3 inputs, no volume, single volume control, phono stage with variable loading.
Okay.
And 2 outs. Can be used with solid state amps, but really loves tube amps. It's going to give you the drive. So like anybody who has any of our amps that are single ended is going to see 20% more performance by adding a pre to it.
Which I can attest. I mean, it is crazy what those, even just little ones. I just had the little one. So this
do you remember
like
remember the standalone boxes that we had hooked up?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that in a different case.
But a different case and like a next level of like like quality build and all that kind of stuff. Okay.
Yep.
And then so we have the preamp coming out. And then I want to see this new Black October. I want to see the Jeremiah Stealth Black October.
Can you guys see that okay?
Nope, bring it down a little bit more. There it is. Wow.
So we have black
no volume pot.
Black on black on black. So black silk screening that only shows up with light reflected to it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Stealth Edition with Western Electric 300Bs.
Beefy.
And in the back, it has 16 ohm and 8 ohm speaker taps.
Ooh.
So if you like Zoo speakers or you like LS35As, it's a perfect fit.
Nice.
And so, yeah, you have the ability to run 16 ohm or 8 ohm speakers, and you still have 8, 16, 32, 100, 300.
Bring it down a little bit more, Justin. Sorry, we're losing.
Yep.
There it is.
There we go.
So you got the 8, 16, 30. Wait, what was it again?
8, 16, 32, 100, 300. Okay. And if you can barely see, do you guys see the reflected light now?
Yeah, barely.
The labels are there.
You purposely made them stealth, though.
Yes.
That's pretty dope.
It's mine, and I know what each one does.
This is your personal.
If someone asked for a Red October to be Stealth Edition or Black October Edition, what it means to me is to take the volume pot off. And I've done this for customers who have bought pre's for me that I've done custom, like Jeremiah is saying, where like they buy a Mogwai SC and we take the volume pot off because they're buying a pre.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you already have a pre, like there's no point in having a volume pot on there. Like
100%.
I can agree with this.
Why add a function when you don't need it? And it
because like you said, all you're doing is cranking it and then using the pre anyway. So why even bother? And then
and so then it becomes a really bespoke power amp. It's a specialist both for speakers and for headphones.
It's perfect.
So other products we have a few other. We have what's called the Calypso. So the Calypso is here's the theme, guys. So if you think my big 2-channel amps were national parks, my speakers from long ago were rivers, and the big statement amps are boats. You have Sean Connery's missile carrying October.
Okay.
You have Jacques Cousteau's Calypso.
See, it's funny when you said Calypso. By the way, I thought of the Pirates of the Caribbean, the Calypso witch.
Yes, but I was thinking that. But I remember growing up watching Jacques Cousteau.
I do. Once you said Jacques Cousteau, I was like, oh.
Yes. So you have the Calypso, which is a Nautilus power amp, 2-channel.
Mm-hmm.
So, or another way to think about it is it's a Baby Bryce stereo edition. So It's doing everything that the Bryce does. It's going to be a little less power than the Bryce, but on a single chassis. So no headphone jacks, just for speakers. But if you want that statement piece, purist, only for speaker choice, and the Calypso comes in two versions, either 4 and 8 ohm taps or 8 and 16.
Oh, nice.
And it can run up to KT 150s.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, everybody, I think I don't like telling you this because people sometimes do silly things.
That's true story.
But,
always, not sometimes, always.
But if you have a Bryce or a Nautilus, not a Mogwai, not a bigger bend.
Not a Mogwai, not a bigger bend. Pay attention.
You can run up to KT 150s.
Which we did it in New York. It was ridiculous. Yes. In fact, I think the last tail end of all New York was all 150, I think, right? Wasn't it? It was all 150.
Yep. Other things we have. So this is the Jinx.
I was going to say the Jinx. This is a new one. This is a new thing.
Yes, this is the Jinx, which is using 6v6s.
Okay, very nice.
What's really nice about the Jinx, and I'm going to try to lower the screen. Here we go. What's really nice about the Jinx is it's same size as the Mogwai or what was the pendant.
Mm-hmm.
It has a tonal balance more consistent with the Lilu pendant. So it's a little more neutral. So it's a little less warm, mid-range.
This is new product. This is a new
100% new.
And this is exclusive. Is this an exclusive?
It is going to be sold through us currently.
Okay.
Because we sell, people always kind of give us a hard time about you have a lot of products, but they don't have the level of understanding to know that the transformers are where we spend a lot of money, and they are modular. They allow for amplification building to be more modular.
Gotcha.
That power transformers are different, but output transformers generally aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so the Jinx, and then we can get into a whole different story about why it's called the Jinx. What's really cool about the Jinx, though, is that you can run really, really old tubes very inexpensively. So the Jinx 6v6s, which were like in the Fender Champ from the 50s, they are the progenitor to the EL84.
Gotcha.
And you can run 5Y3 rectifiers. So you can run any 5-volt rectifier. So you can run a 5Y3, a 5AR4, a 5V4, a 5U4. And so each of those is going to give a different sound. And then your power tubes, you can get new old stock really inexpensively, like $60 will get you tubes that are more than 50 years old.
Wow.
And it's going to give you an honest 2 watts. Well, look, we underrate our specs between 30 and 40%. What we write versus what others might put, because we use these Genrad voltage, these Genrad watt meters, and so it's like real power, 100% duty cycle going into them. It's not like an instantaneous measurement. But this is the real 2-watt amplifier, which means that it'll power almost all planar magnetics except for the difficult ones. So you have more mainstream planar magnetics, it'll do it for you pretty easily.
Sorry. One sec.
Not a problem.
Can you please shut the door? That'd be appreciated. Thank you.
So we have the we have the Calypso, the Black October. What's really special, another one that's really special though, is that we have the Rockwell Rev 2 coming out. The Rockwell Rev 2, just like the Agartha 2, so you have a 12AX7 on the front end. You have remember the variable input transformers that we had on the Agartha? So you can actually increase the gain going into the amp if you have like a digital audio player or kind of a lower tier DAC to give it a hotter front end signal. So, and it's going to be as quiet as an Agartha 2 is. So it's going to, verite close, Stelias on 300 ohms, verite close on 300 ohms, Stelias on 32 ohms, whisper quiet, but you're getting to use really, really old tubes.
Which is
the
fantastic.
The 6B4G is the same thing as the 6A3, but as an 8-pin tube versus a 4-pin tube. So if you think 300B, 2A3, 6A3, those are all in the same, like when they were developed, and they're all sort of similar in their design. And then a 6B4G is the same thing as a 6A3, except for the pins are different.
Okay.
So you can get 6B4Gs that are 70 years old, a pair of them for $200,
Which is bananas.
kind of ridiculous. So that's really special. And then the last thing is the pendant has been discontinued.
Mm-hmm.
And it was I am forever grateful from Zach. It was a really productive, good relationship. But it was time to make some adjustments. And so the pendant came from an amp called the Lilu,
Mm-hmm.
which was named after, you guys know I have a thing for names. So like the Mogwai comes from Gremlins. So
Gremlins, yep.
Mogwai, if you get it wet, becomes a gremlin.
Mm-hmm.
And Lilu was the fifth element in the movie, The Fifth Element.
I was say one of my favorite movies.
Or the beautiful girl, Mila Djokovic.
Mila Jovovich, yeah.
Yep. So headphones.com is actually going to be distributing the Lilu again for us.
Okay.
And we've made only one change to the Lilu from its last iteration as a pendant SE. And the one change is that we've returned speaker binding posts to it. So it's going to be 8 ohm and 100 ohm, Jupiter caps, stepped attenuator, and speaker binding posts. So you lose the preamp function. Most people weren't using the pre. It was a very good pre. It worked really, really well as a pre. But
sure,
people
removing the pre, adding back the speaker.
Right. So that for near field listening, go get yourself some KEF LS50 metas, put them near field, and 3 watts is all you need in near field. And like that's a real 3 watts. So like call that a 5 watt amp anywhere else. And you're going to have a really amazing time with it. So they're going to come in stealth black, with a little bit of branding that shows both amps and sound and headphones.com. And the biggest, chunkiest binding posts, the same things that we put on our Mogwai SCs all the way up through our Nautiluses.
Nice.
Or like go buy the old Pioneer. Jeremiah, you remember the Pioneers that were designed by the guy that designed tabs?
Yeah.
You can buy these Andrew Jones.
Yeah.
Go get some Andrew Jones bookshelves made by Pioneer. Those are fantastic and amazing for near field and cost you $300.
Yeah. Perfect.
So that's that's a lot of new.
That's true. That's a lot of
Beach.
Stuff coming down the pipe.
What about Long Beach?
Oh, yes. So well, let me just go back to the I want everybody to know, like, people ask about the pre. I think that I love the tonal balance of single-ended amps.
Mm-hmm.
Single gain stage, no feedback. That's a big, that's an intentional choice by me for our sound signature. And we use really over-spec, big output transformers with lots and lots of inductance. Kind of a counterpoint, if you will, to like the Lundell sound.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Very American in its sort of tonal signature. All of these, all single-ended amplifiers, single gain stage, single-ended amplifiers benefit from having more drive on the input.
Okay.
Not just more voltage, but drive. And which means not a buffer. It means amplifying the input signal, the source signal. And so I almost challenge anybody, go get an LE kit pre, go get one from me, you put it in front of it. If you don't think it's 20% better, I would be astonished. And I'll say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, but I'm not. It will sound 20% better. Jeremiah's heard it. I mean, you're a big believer in pre's, right?
Yep. It's about that time. I'm also big on not having volume control on an amplifier, so I'm into that.
Right. But if you have one, just max it out and then use the pre. A pre does things other than attenuate volume.
Yep.
Agreed.
One of our favorite companies, Transcendent Audio, stopped selling, what was called the grounded grid pre, which was just an absolutely fantastic sounding pre. And we built one for Jeremiah. It's amazing sounding.
Yeah, pre's make a difference.
Definitely. I mean, I agree. I mean, we did it at New York City Can Jam. A lot of people were having problems with it because they were preing. Like, remember that? Just like they're putting their DAPs on there with their own pre-stage. They're putting their DAPs into line out, which is adding a pre to the pre. Then it went to it was crazy. So there's this. But yeah, like pre's matter. Like that in and of itself shows how much people actually don't even realize that they're using a pre or that they need to have a pre or want to have a pre.
I mean, like if you have too hot a signal, you can overdrive an amp. There's no doubt about that. That's what we call like gain matching matters. But if you're evaluating, assuming that you're not overdriving the amplifier and you're evaluating things at sort of normal levels, norming out SPL, there are texture that is added that is an improvement in the sound quality almost always.
I noticed it without the DAP line out, but just with what you had set up. We had we have Estelle and Kearns, and that with the pre to the Nautilus or the Mogwai or the Red October was fantastic. And I did notice that big jump. And then when I had it back here, the Mogwai, I did a video with the Mogwai SE with the pre. Was it Mogwai SE? Yeah, I think it was a Mog, or no, it was a Kinsey. It was a Kinsey that I had the pre. And it was, oh man, it does make a big difference. And
you were using it just like even with individual boxes, but like if you took the Kinsey that you listened to and put the Ellie kit in front of it, I'd be hard pressed to say like that wasn't a better sound.
No, I can 100% agree with you. Like it is like it does have that. It jumps. It's like there's a big jump there. So agreed.
Jeremiah reminded me by saying the words Long Beach. So
yeah, Long Beach.
Where to find us? Chicago Can Jam. Dan Clark is going to have a Nautilus at booth, and what I call a show fixture version of the pre. LA Audio, we're going to be doing the headphonium at the show Long Beach.
The show Long Beach. It's a home audio show, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, so it's a 2-channel. It's an audio show, sort of like a smaller version of Axpona, if you will, more modest version. It was tremendously successful last year, but much smaller, but small in scale. I think they're much bigger this year. And it's the first time they've done a headphone show. And I wanted to represent, and
right there. Why not?
In addition, Akora Speakers, which makes these beautiful speakers with granite cabinets, CNC cut granite cabinets.
That sounds ridiculous.
It's pretty beautiful. They're going to have a huge room, like 30 by 30, like one of the ballrooms. And our Zions are powering a set of their speakers in the 2-channel in the big room, which is I think going to be pretty amazing. And then you have Can Jam SoCal in October.
Yeah,
and I can't wait for that. It's kind of our home show, and we're going to be bringing out the big guns. We'll have a pre there. We're going to have a Nautilus, a Red October, a Partridge, a Pear Tree.
Fair enough. That's gonna be dope. Those are some really awesome shows. And then and I will say, like I've been to the Can Jam SoCal. I've been to New York now, and I would say, yeah, those are, if you get the opportunity, especially now that COVID's over, you should definitely go check out those spots and go see those amps and give them a try.
If we have just 2 minutes more, I wanted to say my take on something and then ask Jeremiah his belief on it. So lots of times people ask why your amps are which ones.
Yes.
They, more than 70% of your cost of your amp goes into building your amp. So we don't function on the same margins that other companies, because this is exercise in hubris almost more than anything else. And so I try to build really dope shit. And we succeed in that, but we don't do it on value proposition. Our value propositions are to execute really good products that make sense for where they are. It's not about profit margin. And so if you look at our products, as you spend more money, you don't necessarily get more features. The features get executed either better, or you get a better part that's doing it.
Kind of the no cost kind of thing.
Right. Like our like our Nautiluses and our Red Octobers, they take like 16 hours to build. Not counting, like, we're not talking about the build time of the metal work or the finishing or
Straight
the
up putting
transformers.
all the parts together.
100%, 16 hours. So we build, like, if we're lucky to build 2 a week. And that's just it. That's what it is. But if you look at our line, as transformers get bigger, the sound becomes more intimate. The bass is more grounded. The frequency response is flatter. I don't believe that headphones win with imaging personally. That's my own bias.
Speakers are going to ultimately beat headphones at the end of the day.
But I don't think that speakers beat headphones for intimacy.
Yeah.
And
agreed.
so, people could argue Justin's amps don't have the air and space, perhaps. And I could go, that's an interpersonal choice. That's a debatable issue. But sure as shit, you ain't going to win us on intimacy. How close you are to that performer, what the micro detail that's available to you, the feeling of trueness from that performance. So if you look at our line, if the transformers are of the same size, Bigger Ben, Ovation, Red October, Rockwell, those are all at the same level of performance. It's a question of certain, and one might think the same level of execution even. It becomes then a question of circuit choice. They're different tubes because different tubes sound different, and each one brings a different experience. Whereas, let's say like a Forge, a Lilu, or a Kenzie use very similar sized output transformers. The choice of whether it makes sense to you as a good purchase is one of personal preference based on tone, right? And then the glass middle cup, not counting our statement pieces. Look, if you can fucking afford the statement pieces, buy them. They're the very best work with the very best parts, but not everybody can, and that's okay. Your happiness can be found at lower levels too.
Yeah. I mean, the Kinsey at the end of the day is fantastic and stupid good, like really good, beyond
and
fantastic.
The Mogwai SC is our best seller because it's quiet enough for a Verite closed, yet powerful enough for an HE6 or a Susvara.
And speakers.
And does speakers. Well, it can bring the thunder to a lot of things. So, but I wanted to actually hear sort of Jeremiah's thoughts about how we organize our products and guiding principles that people can look at, And what are your thoughts, Jeremiah?
Well, we definitely started out with less power, and as more power went up, the requirements went up. So the price went up, but it was the same brand and the same tone with a different sonic signature. And also just not a different amount of how do you say this? Not different tuning, but a different way of listening to each amplifier. Like they spent a lot of time making each one an amplifier into a headphone amplifier, then also into an integrated amplifier. And having a chance to listen to your same circuit on different systems gives you an idea of why you think that one's special. Like the Lilu, we didn't really even show the Lilu until like ZMF at the first show. It took it pretty much, right?
I would say Lilu is like a short period of time, right? Yeah.
I think no time. I think our first show we brought it to, like, that's when we met like ZMF. It became like it was a behemoth thing that we didn't actually launch out really but we did understand that like smaller tubes had the tone, the smaller tunes that they weren't off. It wasn't off. It was on brand to make smaller tubes too.
Mhm.
It didn't have to be everything bigger and bigger and bigger, more choke, more power transformer, more weight. Everything is a two-hander. At a certain point, we had confidence in the tone we had with the Kenzie to play in different areas. So it's kind of based on your headphone choice.
Mhm.
I mean, not totally, but it's kind of based on a lot of choices.
It's fair.
Right. I mean, and things to kind of take away, like if you, with all of the amps when they went Rev 2 are more neutral than they were Rev 1, because they went from an octal input tube to a 12AX7, 12AU7, 12AY7, ET7, 5751. It's a quieter tube, but it's also all of those tubes characterologically are more neutral
Mhm.
than a 6SL7, which is some 1950s warmth, 1940s, 50s warmth.
And I want to before we close out, I want to talk on that real quick. The difference between a neutral tube and people are always gonna. This is crazy to me. Like some levels, right? Like so. You get those 1950s 6L S7s. I'm probably saying the wrong thing.
It's SL7.
Yeah. like those sound, they have character, like good character, like fantastic character. And there's something you said about going to the neutral side of going to the other tubes and what have you. But I think that there's a place for both, really. I think that there's I don't know, but
there's a range. Everything has a range.
Yeah.
Everything has a range. We don't all have one headphone. We don't all have one speaker. At the end of the day, you're kind of going to a range of things.
Exactly.
The average consumer, our average,
probably 12 AUX7s, that kind of thing.
Well, no, I was going to say our average evangelist owns 3 headphones at least.
That's true. I mean, if you're buying,
for the amp, you're saying, not just in general, not like these headphones.
Yeah. Like for the amp,
right.
Yeah.
And right. We all have like a collection, and we have reasons why we've chosen those collections. But back to the point, like we went to Rev 2 for a wide variety of reasons. One was like the ability to tube roll, back to sort of like the 1,000 decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also, efficient headphones are here to stay and are an important idea to support. And being able to make an amp 20% quieter with a different input tube made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, I like the romantic sound of an older tube.
Yeah. And that's what I was trying to get at.
Which is why, like, I was holding out with the Rockwell being the only thing that was still octal, but then I kind of, like I got behind the Red October. Jeremiah can tell you, like, me and 300Bs have had a mixed history, but I got behind the Red October because Western Electric made it possible to own the very best choice of tube. I mean, $1,500 is a lot of money for me. $1,500 is a lot for anybody. But to understand that, like, you can't do better, right? And they give you a lifetime. They give you a 5-year warranty. So for $1,500, you can have the top echelon choice. It's like, all right, I'll build a 300B because I now know that I have a reliable
sustainable part. Yeah. Reliable, sustainable.
Russian tubes are great and they sound wonderful, and I'm not like, I think that they're what are supplied, but so many of our evangelists, our supporters, know that they want to be able to buy the best, and they want to be able to, so rather than finding a new old stock 300B for 10 grand, being able to pay $1,500, it feels accessible and real. So, I wanted these amps to be quieter, and I wanted them to be more powerful. And so moving to the 9-pin really helped make that possible, but just kind of things to know. The Kenzie is going to be the warmest. The next up would be the Jinx, which is very similar tonally to a Lilu, while still giving access to old tubes. The Jinx is the only thing left with a 6SL7 front end. So it's meant, a half of me wants to not call it the Jinx, but call it the Classic.
That works. I mean, I like that too.
Well, we had an amp called the Classic Wonder, so it's a little too kissing cousins to an old name. But I think that there's a place in it. So where the Kenzie went old power tubes, new front end tube, the Jinx goes old school.
Straight old school. Gotcha.
And then you have the Mogwai, which is the generalist. The Mogwai is like, hey, you wanted big transformers? These are
the catch-all.
You wanted more input, more taps, because one of the things that's the most important about our amplifiers is we matched the secondary impedance of the output transformer to your voice coil. Nope, almost no one else is doing that. Look, no one else is doing that. That is a unique idea that we pioneered and have popularized. And the reason why people don't do it is that it requires a massive investment in tooling, because we have 3 levels of transformers in past one before you get into the statement pieces, and each of those requires that same technology and minimum order quantities and stocking and all this other kinds of stuff. So the Mogwai gives you those 3 taps, where the Kenzie gave you 2, the Jinx gives you 2, the Mogwai gives you 3. And then you get into our reference line,
which be like, is that where the Calypso
which
comes
is
into play?
No, that's a statement. But
Statement,
like the
okay.
Ovation, the Agartha,
Rockwell.
the Rockwell, right? The Bigger Ben. Now you have 5 taps. The same 5 taps that are in the statement pieces. The fundamental difference between a Bigger Ben and a Nautilus is that a Nautilus is a dual mono amp, has 2 of everything. And it is all hand wired, where a Bigger Ben is much more of an example of a very good modern design tube amplifier using circuit boards. So there's some efficiency of time and things like that, but you're still getting access to good transformers.
So it's like statement versus like a Pinnacle.
Well, so you have reference and then statement. And the Mogwai, is where the Kenzie uses old tubes, new front end. The Mogwai uses essentially big power tubes and a new front end, but you have the ability of both bigger transformers to get intimacy, and you have tube rectification to get intimacy, and you can throw almost any freaking tube into it and it's going to work. Which is the same with like the Bigger Ben and those other choices. That's why the Mogwai, but the Mogwai is that middle tier in the warmth chart for us.
Okay.
Where so the Jinx is more neutral than the Mogwai, the Kenzie is more warm than the Mogwai.
Okay. I agree.
And then the Bigger Ben and the Agartha is sort of like moving up from the Mogwai line straight up. So it's still right in that same middle territory, but now you're moving up in execution and intimacy and weight. And then you keep going from that tier to the Nautilus.
Nautilus, yep.
And from the Nautilus, you have the Nautilus and the Agartha. Nautilus and the Red October. People ask this basic question: is an Agartha better than a Bigger Ben, and is a Red October better than a Nautilus?
Products.
Well, so a Bigger Ben is a tube roller's choice. An Agartha is the second best 300B amp out there. So if you want 300Bs, you have to understand I'm buying into a single tube family.
Yeah. An expensive single tube family.
Potentially, yeah. Depending on what you're doing, right? So, do I want to roll tubes, or do I want
set and forget?
Set it, forget it, 300B, lots of taps, and the Agartha and the Rockwell is, do I want to go old tubes that I can afford, or do I want 300Bs? Do I want, because they're both triodes, both direct heated, both zero feedback. So the question becomes, do I want old ass tubes that that are affordable, or do I want it to be a 300B?
Gotcha.
right? But the last question is a Red October better than a Nautilus?
What's like saying, is vanilla better than chocolate?
Sometimes.
If you're
what's
buying
your mood?
if you're buying Western Electric 300Bs, fuck yes. If you're not, the Nautilus is the better answer.
Fair.
Because you can buy old octal power tubes,
Which is fantastic. When you can find some
You can
real
run
freaking
some-
unicorns.
Mullard EL34 FX2s with the fins, some RCA black plate 6L6s,
So-
some TT21s with adapters.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and then we'll move into this. Like, so basically, what it comes down to is you have your set and forget, or I want a tube roll, and that's really, it's not necessarily as one's better than the other. It's whether or not you want to be
Are you
tube
that guy?
rolling. Yeah, are you that guy that tube rolls, or are you guy that goes, I want the best, and I'm done, and I'm like, right? I
I mean,
mean,
you could say like I bought the best KT88 out there. Like, so if you said like, hey, I have some GEC KT88s in a bigger bin or in a Nautilus versus
fantastic.
100%, or do I have a Western Electrics in an Agartha versus a Red October? The GECs are absolute magic and have more slam. The Western Electrics are the company that fucking founded the tube.
Yeah.
Now, if it ain't a Western Electric, I would still go to the tube roller choice.
Fair.
Unless you're a 300B guy. Like, I'm a 300B guy because I got the best 300B I can get.
But that's usually what you're looking at, though. If you're a 300B guy, you're working your way. If you're not already there, you're working your way to that, right? At some level.
But the Calypso exists because my young child is not so young anymore, Kenzie.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, she does have one of the very first production Kenzies in the hat box. Remember the hat box, Jeremiah? We had this trifold hat box, so it looked like remember, like if you bought a brown, like a derby hat.
Yeah.
So the original Kenzies came in like this derby hat box with a handle on it.
That's crazy. That's cool.
So, my daughter, I know now knows electronics and safe practices, and I don't think she's going to burn herself. And so instead of the Parasound gear that's in my living room, because I worried about a young child and tube amplifiers without supervision, the Calypso is going there. Now, you could say, why didn't you build the power amp version of a Stealth October, Justin? Well, it's coming. That's a 2023 issue, not a 2022 issue.
To be determined.
Well, no, the Calypso, and let's call it the Stealth October for lack of better word, has some very significant changes to the power supply that it gets 2 more transformers.
Nice.
It already lives in the lab. It's just a question of production timing. But I chose that the Calypso came first because I wanted accessible NOS tubes without paying $1,500. So the first 2-channel statement amp that's coming out, 2-channel stereo amp that's coming out, is the one that has accessible NOS tubes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called the Calypso, and it's based off the Nautilus.
Fair. Which is fantastic.
But it was this question about the value proposition of tube choice.
Mm-hmm. That's what it really comes down to, right? Are you a tube guy that rolls, or are you a tube guy that wants to just have it and forget it? I think at the end of the day, right? I mean, I don't know. That's my take on tubes.
And because I'm a Corn Scala guy, the same big Corn Scalas that you have, I have in my living room. Mm-hmm. I wanted a little more slam. Because they're horns, they already got the air.
Yeah.
So I wanted slam. So I went with a tube that's going to give me slam. KT88, KT120s, KT150s are going to give me slam.
Yeah.
Yep.
And 3D holographic imaging, where I think that the Red October has air and space
it's
micro details.
It's this whole crazy, yeah, it's the whole stage imaging. It's an imaging and staging craziness. It's holographic.
But if you want tonally dense, then I think like the Nautilus is a better choice.
That's fair.
You know, and so that's why the Calypso will be built.
There you go, Calypso.
What's your thoughts, Jeremiah? I mean, Jeremiah was a tube roller. Fuck, man, how many RCA 12AU7s have you owned, Jeremiah?
Too many. Yeah, too many. Yeah, too much tubes. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a 300B guy. I always push Justin to do the 300B. I think that it's interesting that he always goes back to the KT88s. Not always goes back, but it's always this balance of, should I go to a petite tube or should I do like the, you know, so I do something known, not something should I go a little more standard. And I don't know, man, there's a lot of fun in rolling tubes. There's a lot of you say this. There's a lot of fear. You know what I mean? If you're involved with like buying stuff like this too, because you know, you never know the matching of it or how it's going to sound or what's going on. It's a whole like a lot of research. It's a lot of fun to play. It's a fun game to play.
There's an exploration too, like that joy of exploration too, right? And discovery.
Or your friend coming over and being like, check this tube out, and you're like, okay, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, that made a difference.
All of the tubes, all of the amps allow for multiple places to roll, but like power tube rolling is like the last bastion. It should be the last thing you're rolling, truth be told.
Good.
Because it's the most expensive to play in.
Fair. And
but I mean, like my Stealth October, I was toying between, there's this special tube that has the drive characteristics of a 12AT7, but the gain characteristics of a 12AX7 versus, and you know, we thought it was going to be a really, really good fit, but it was a little too on edge for me. And then I pulled out, and I mean, Jeremiah can tell you, like, I don't own 12AUs. I like gain, but I have like two. And one of them is like right. And one of them, though, is a Mullard, the 1960s Mullard 12AU7, you know, test brand new. And man, that thing just, it's like butter. It was, you know, took a little bit of the edge off because not that you guys got to see it tonight, but I built myself a set of Altec 604s. And they have 16-inch woofers with a big fucking horn. And listening in the near field, if you don't humanize them, they're going to hurt you. And so that 12AU, that single tube choice was enough to make it where I could live with the amp differently, or I could live with the speakers and the amp differently.
fair. And that's I think that's the key, right? Is that's the whole point of tube rolling in general, is finding that symmetry, finding that the way that they sync together and you know, and play well together versus not, because there's some of that too. But I think, and that's where I think that it's really intriguing and fantastic about a lot of your amps too, is that you can do that, or if you really want to, you can just put in the socket stock ones and be done.
So we're running a little, well, we ran really late on time,
late.
which I appreciate you guys chatting with me, but why don't each of you close down your last thoughts? What's something you want to share? Oh, Kendrick Lamar's album dropped, right?
Yeah, man. I have a buddy he was doing a live show, like listening session with all his buddies. So yeah, fantastic. That I've heard a couple I've heard the first portion of it, I guess CD 1 or how you want to call it, but side 1, and it's fantastic. Very different, very, very good though. Different what I was expecting from Kendrick Lamar, but it's good, like really good. But anyways, Jeremiah, I'll let you start and then we'll roll from there.
Final thoughts. I mean, I guess it's like I'm excited to see you at the show. How about that?
Wait. Jeremiah, the pimp that he is going. Where are you going, man? Where are you traveling to?
I'm going to Munich next week. I'm going to see Munich Hi-Fi.
Nice.
So that'll be
That's
my
that's
first,
legit.
Yeah,
That'll
that's a
be
cool
that'll
show.
be a fun one. Yeah, that'll be a fun one. Then NAM.
Nice.
Then I'll see you at the Long Beach show for sure. Yeah, I'm excited. There's a lot of stuff to see. There's a lot of stuff in the world to see. There's also a lot of stuff to share. You know what I mean? I think that it's Amps and Sound is obviously a brand that like I believe in, but I also think it's a brand I want to see like go worldwide. You know what I mean? I want to see it. I want to see there's what's happening and like where we worked at or where we work at as far as like in California. It's all like a lot of it's like it's all kind of made of a network that Justin's made. And I think it's I think there's a real expression that's going on right now, and I'd like to see this go.
My next step.
Yeah, just more people, more appreciators.
I agree.
I'm gonna leave it to you. I'm gonna do the next one, Tyler, and then I'm gonna let you close us down. I'm gonna do two things. One, when you try to do better and better, the 2-channel stuff has become the real expression of like, what does it mean to put things where weight doesn't matter, size doesn't matter, but execution does. Execution and part selection does. And so I'm excited to kind of be able to show, the same values I bring to headphones. What does it mean when there are different constraints that aren't the concern of space? So I'm pretty excited by some of the things that we've brought out and bringing out in the 2-channel space. Like I definitely am a headphone guy first at this point, but the nicer I make headphone amps makes it so that I want to make 2-channel amps nicer too. It's an interesting, for me, it's a flip from where I started. So I'm excited by that. I mean, I will tell you that our Nautilus, anywhere from the Kenzie to the Red October, you will always get our best work. But the Nautilus and the Red October are representative of some of the finest amplifiers that are built in the world today. And I don't think that that's hyperbole or salesmanship on me. I mean, like, put it against a Shindo. Like, no bullshit, put it against a Shindo. Let's talk about it. Pop the lid and tell me what you think. Now, I don't wind my own transformers. I don't wind my own resistors. Shindo does sometimes. They're awesome, but we're executing at this point at a really, really high level, whether that be for a Kenzie or a Stealth October. We give it that same level of attention. Now I'm going to close it down with 2 points that I want people to know, because I truly do believe that the audio tent should be as wide and tall as to include all. One, I bought myself an Emotiva, the newest version of whatever the A100 is called, just last night because I got a break in my Altex. And then I don't believe in running tube amps unless you're watching them, because tubes can fail. Amps don't fail almost always. It's almost always the tubes. And I have cats, and cats are fire hazards if ever there were. But the Emotiva is such a good starter point for a 2-channel system. At $300, go buy yourself a set of Kef LS50s or the Andrew Jones Pioneer ones. I think you're going to be stupid happy. And if you're a little bit of a DIY nut like I and Jeremiah are, and if ever you guys need to talk to Jeremiah about digital, he is like this man knows digital at a really high level. If you go to Matasound, you can buy Hypex monoblocks for $700 each, 400-watt Hypex monoblocks. So for $1,400, you can get yourself a set of 400-watt Class D, super awesome, dedicated monoblocks. Or for $500, they have the 2-channel stereo Hypex amp. No soldering involved, super reliable, the tightest bass you will have ever heard. If you like EDM, stupid good choices. It doesn't have to be me, but make sure that the gear you choose is awesome. Like stuff to be proud of, that it represents your values. Jeremiah, what do you think about the Hypex kits, man?
I like them. Hypex is my. That was one we yeah. I built a Hypex. I bought a Hypex amplifier a while back, and that was my first time being like, "Holy crap, this can do this!" And then when I got the Zoos right here, we actually have a Hypex module in the back to power the subwoofers. So I'm big on Hypex, man, and the Purify stuff too. Class D in general. I think Class A. I think at Class AD is really interesting, but Class D, all the GAN amp stuff. So there's a lot of interesting amplifier stuff going on. It's not as nostalgic as ours are, or romantic, is how my engineer would say it.
Romantic. I think.
Well, I mean,
Romantic. We make romantic amplifiers.
yes, we do. Wait,
Yeah,
and
are.
anybody who
and
anybody
they're
who
two-handers. Just so you know, there's nothing that Ampson Sound makes that doesn't take two hands. You know, unless you're trying to be some show off.
But anybody who owns a mechanical watch, if they don't call themselves romantic as being is
Disingenuous a little bit.
right. You it doesn't have to be the most precise to be the most emotive to you to the expression of music as delivered to you.
Mhm.
By the way, I got nothing wrong with NAD. I like NAD. I'm not talking smack, but I would rather build myself a set of monoblock Hypex modules than get the probably better performing, better sounding NAD stereo unit. The NAD stereo unit's really amazing, and if you need to be the guy that has to have beautiful casework, the NAD is the better choice. But I'm a DIY build it yourself kind of guy, and so the Matasound Hypex kits are dope.
Good enough.
Report back on that.
All
Well-
right, Tyler, it's your show, man. You get to close this down.
Oh, it's your show. I'm just here to help out and chat with you guys. I think for me as an end user, more like I consider myself more of that proper end user, right? Like I don't really, I do some DIY, I do some, but at the end of the day, I'm an end user. And for me, like when my favorite thing, like I love your amps with headphones. Like they are intimate, they are amazing. But the thing that I've grabbed ever since I got the Corn Scalas, the things I love pairing your amps with are speakers. Like that's the thing that, like for me, like I don't know if I ever told you this, but like that's something that like when I put them with the Corn Scalas, and even with my LS50s, like that's where I really fall in love with them, because that's how I started in the hobby as well. Like I was going down speaker route, then I had my daughter who's also 5, and so I went to headphones because, as you do with as kids and whatnot, you don't want to disturb. But now that she's older, like you're also mentioning, this is weird path that you take in the audiophile world. And so now I'm back into the speaker world a little bit more. And I will say that for me, the balance between headphones and speakers, because now I really love headphones. Like I really love them. But the fact that I can pair it with a speaker and have it sound just as amazing, if not more amazing, or what your preference is, it's really going to come down to preference. That's fantastic. So for me, that's where I really enjoy the ability as an end user that to be able to jump between the two, and really my two different, audiophile loves, if you will.
I mean, I've told people, and Zoo is a great example of another amazing company with the same sort of value set. I own a set of Soul Supremes. Jeremiah owns probably the coolest set of Zoo speakers that exist.
It's pretty cool.
Definitions in custom black on black. But a dirty weekend in a Mogwai, a Zoo dirty weekend with the Mogwai SE is such a complete idea, total house filling, rock you out kind of speaker combination.
Yeah, agreed.
And then to be able to pivot that to something like the ZMFs.
Or
you
even like
know.
some of the Hyphenmans or
Mhm.
Rad Zeros, like the Rad Zeros. Honestly, like that's my favorite pairing.
Mhm.
But like, but is my outside the ZMFs that is, and the HJ100s. Those are also. But yeah, fantastic. I love that. As an end user, that's my experience with it. Like that. I love that I can do, like you mentioned before, like I can jump between the two loves of my audiophile loves, I guess, and be able to have equally amazing experiences, I guess, is where really what it comes down to. So
For sure. Well, guys, thank you so much for talking with me. We'll see if people want to hear more.
yeah,
Take it from there.
sounds like a plan.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
Later.
Cheers.
See you guys.